Okay. So something that keeps coming up and that I want to kind of get a plan around today and discuss with people is everybody here is planning to grow, right? Nobody's planning to like not grow or get smaller. No. Okay. So one of the things that I know when I did earlier on is I want to grow, I want to grow. And I never actually planned for how I was going to grow. Like what structure would I need to follow? How would things change if I added work? How would, what would my expenses look like? Like all of these things that that come with growth and in even stability, right? So again, for me, I'm more of at a stability position where I'm not looking to grow, I'm only looking to stabilize, right? So like for me, I need to make sure that every role has multiple people in line for it and that my stability doesn't get threatened. Okay. Now, in terms of growth mindset, for guys especially that haven't had a full scale operation yet or that are just starting to get a taste of that, I want to talk about like the roles that we're creating. Okay, so it's very easy to, and this is a big mistake, is to find a person you think would fit a role and then try and build a role around that person. All right, big mistake. All right, we do not want to fall into that trap. Because what ends up happening is, yeah, they might be able to do a couple of things that you would expected them to do, but you're kind of left with somebody that you're not really clear about, and there's not a lot of efficiency. So like, I'll give you an example. The guy that hires one of the guys off the tools to be the salesman, right? Or hires his friend from high school that he thinks could do sales in construction. No experience, no nothing. So what ends up happening is we actually take a step back trying to overinvest in somebody with basically hopes and dreams, right? We're trying to force somebody to become something, and we're not really clear on what that role is to begin with ourselves. Okay. And there's also another element to this is sometimes we will assume we need a project manager. Oh, when I get to this number, I'm going to need someone to manage all of the work. Okay. Unfortunately, I will be the first to tell you is here's two things that are going to come into your way. Number one, a project manager needs to come into an established environment to be successful and to earn you a profit because of the cost of their wages, 120,000 being the starting point. All right. And they're managers. Okay. The big misconception here. They're not out there working. They're not out there putting the tool bag on when you need, extra hands. They're not going to do the things you're going to do. They have an expectation. A good project manager, again, is essentially the admin and the decision making person in the process, or a superintendent, however you're set up. So instead of saying a project manager and assuming some of the roles and responsibilities there, we actually need a coordinator. Okay. And the first step to a project manager is actually a coordinator. We need just somebody to coordinate our jobs. All right. Much lower position, less of a job description. So what we'll do to kind of start this thing off is I'm going to go through my roles and responsibilities so you can kind of see, again, how I'm breaking it down and, understanding that a role can have a title. Okay. But that means absolutely nothing. Right. I can put a title of CEO on, a laborer if I want to. All right. But what are the actual responsibilities and how are they going to perform those things for me? How is it relevant to my business? Again, a big mistake is taking a job description that you are unfamiliar with the roles and responsibilities and what they actually mean, and not having systems or processes that match up to those roles and responsibilities. So like, again, that moment when you hire someone and now the oh shit, hits in that Monday, I've got this new project manager coming in at 120 grand. I have these, these great ideas of him just magically operating my whole business, and I have nothing for him to even start with. Right. And
Can I share something?
Yeah.
My son's 18.
Mm-hmm.
He's a dishwasher. It's his
Okay.
summer job. And he came home literally last night and said, Mom, I'm an aquatic technician working with plastics, ceramics, and metals.
Perfect. I
I was
love
like,
that. That's a
you
great
do
title.
what? He goes, I wash dishes. I'm like, oh my God.
Right. Right. So, and again, here's the caveat to this. All right. All of us at one point or another hire a person and try and fit a role around them. All of us do. All right. We've all tried it. It's, we probably, most of us have failed at doing it. I learned to stop doing that a long time ago. And it's just for this simple reason. Even if the person was really great, okay, and like they did possess some of the skills, you're playing with fire there, right? How is your business if that person is to leave? All right. What happens to the business? What happens to all the work and effort and energy that you've put in, right? What happens to, like, again, so what we have to do is, and dare I say this statement, but we actually have to slow down and to speed up here. Okay. Before we plan to grow, before we do anything in the hiring, onboarding phase, we got to get really, really clear on the impact of the role and the specifics to that role. All right. Now we're going to actually find a person that fits the role. All right. And have them, live up to the role that we've created. Okay. A lot of us get stuck on, well, he should do this and should do that. I was actually speaking with a customer this morning. It's really, kind of got me more thinking about this. And, he had hired a project manager, which was great. And when we were going through the tasks and responsibilities, we're looking at him and we're going, okay, great. Like, he's going to read all your plans and no, I'm going to do that. No, I'm going to do that. All right. I'm like, okay, so he's going to run some estimates and stuff. No, I'm handling that. I'm like, so what exactly is this person doing? Is he like a glorified gopher here? Right. And, by the time we finished the conversation, it was very clear that he'd hired basically somebody off the tools with zero management skills, right? Zero admin skills, had never, hadn't used a computer, like wasn't comfortable with technology, like, and you've just now brought this person up from the field to play in this role, and you have no, like, they don't even have the skill sets to perform, the most basic of tasks, right? But he's a great guy. He does well with the guys. All right. The guys like him. I'm like, oh, so what? Right? What does that do for you in your business? You now just went backwards because you're still doing all the things that you wanted that person to do. All right. Except for he's basically handling the guys not working now and being called a project manager. So where do we go wrong here? So let's get into this a little bit. So first of all, in my business, I use divisions. You don't have to, but ultimately we want to have a top down, company structure. All right. So, what are our objectives? What is the priorities of each division? All right. And they've got to be clear, right? They've got to be very easy to pick up and understand. All right. If we can't define what we want these, call them divisions, call them departments, call them whatever you want. If you can't clearly define in a simple way what exactly it is the outcome should be, all right, you're going to have a very hard time creating roles, creating anything below that. Okay. So our first step in all of this is, imagine the business, not the business that you have currently. All right. The business you want to have in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. Okay. And I'll be the first to tell you, like, I grew into my company structure. All right. My company structure didn't just, appear, right? I grew into it. I had those roles plotted and I had planned. And as things came up, as problems came up, as things that I was struggling with came up, I started adding, details to the job descriptions of the people I haven't even hired yet. And I encourage everyone here to do the same. The reason why is sometimes we're going to scale up, sometimes we're going to scale down. What happens when we have to scale down? What happens when you have to move one of these pieces out of the company structure? All right. Again, if you're not thinking about this, you're going to find it very difficult. First, to find the right person to fit the role, and secondly, to recover if that person were to leave, to have a secondary plan, another plan to it, and then probably the most importantly, to get that person up and being productive, actually, producing a profit. Right. This is where it gets complicated. All right. So, I mean, again, you can kind of see here, what is our objectives? All right, an operation to maintain an organizational communication, accurate documentation across all jobs, answer incoming calls, schedule necessary appointments, tracking P&L on each job, handle accounts payable and receivables, right? So at the operations level, that's a general breakdown, right? Then we have, the residential objectives, do what you say you're going to do, hold yourself accountable to your words, create lasting relationships that will drive repeat business and raving fans, representing our customers through the process of providing roof systems they deserve, right? And then again, I'm going back, like, what are the, you know, the big tasks, the big things that need to be done, all right? So on and so forth, all the way down the line, okay? Now, the next step to this is, we all know that we could define and be like, hey, you know, the sales department's responsibility is estimating, all right? We want to have accurate estimates. Does that mean that they could outsource those estimates? They're going to get somebody else to do them, charge the company back, right? If you don't create do's and don'ts, all right, if you don't make these things very clear from the lessons you've learned along the way, and you don't continuously update these things, it's very hard, again, to, you know, to find the right people that fit the role, all right, and have them be efficient. So how many of you guys learn very valuable lessons regularly in your business? How many are still learning lessons in your business?
Mhm.
How many of you taken a whipping even this year where something new has come up? Okay. I want to, you know, again, I've gotten into this practice a long time ago, and I've made this a part of our culture, but we're always learning. We should always be learning. We should always be developing, and things should break. All right. Here's, you know, another concept. If you're not breaking things along the way, and like, again, you're not having, you know, guys quit, and like your business isn't actually growing. All right. That's the craziest thing. If you want to rapidly grow a business, let's say you want to grow 100%, right? You want to go from, you know, $1 million to $2 million. Okay. The reality of that is, you will, the employees and staff that you have at that level of 1 million, pushing them, let's say, over 12 months to 2 million. All right. Only about 7 or 8% of those employees will be left at the end of that growth spurt. Okay. That's a reality. All right. That's a fact. So again, you know, a lot of people assume that, hey, everyone will just be along for the ride. I want to keep everybody, but that's not realistic. Fastest growing companies, your fastest growing companies out there, there's churn, right? And again, just think about it in a logical way, right? If you have to make dramatic changes to get to the next level, right? You have to add things. Is that going to stress the people that are there? Is that going to change the arrangement that you have? Absolutely, right? So you need to be prepared for that. Okay. Now, where do's and don'ts come into play is, you're going to make mistakes along the way. You're going to make big mistakes, catastrophic mistakes. All right. But if you don't learn to take that lesson learned and do something valuable with it, all right, do something consistently with that lesson learned, then it's a loss. It's an absolute loss. Okay. It all stays in your head and on your chest and on your heart. All right. And again, you know, I've had major catastrophes, major, like, things I don't know how I've come back from. And every time I think about it this way: am I going to allow this to happen to me? All right. Or I'm going to make this happen for me. All right. And with that whole idea is, you know, good can always come from bad. And we have to make that a part of our culture. When there's screw ups, when there's, like, okay, great. What did we learn? How am I going to prevent this from ever happening again? All right. All of these things, you know, they're a reflection of your business, and everyone's going to be different. Right. So as you look at kind of our do's and don'ts, like, these come from people specifically. These come from, like, every one of them have a unique meaning to me, because it meant something, you know, it was a staff member or an attitude or something that I struggled with, that really, when I got rid of, I was able to move up or move down or whatever I was attempting to do. Right. So again, if you want to have powerful, meaningful, you know, roles and descriptions and company structure, you know, put your lessons learned into these things. This is the biggest opportunity to prevent the thing from happening again. All right. And the more you document and the more you create structure around those lessons learned, all right, the less those things happen and the more growth that you have. Right. So the next person coming into that role, it's 10%, 20% better. All right. It's actually 30% clearer. That's usually what the problem is. They don't clearly understand what they're responsible for. Right. They don't clearly know how they're held accountable. They don't clearly, like it. And again, as soon as those things begin to happen, I mean, that's where it starts to fall apart. Right. So do's and don'ts. All right. Now we get into roles and responsibilities. For me, I've gone away with the traditional job descriptions. I don't know how many of you guys have are still kind of using those. And the traditional job descriptions, a long document with like everything kind of, put in there of all the things that they've got to do. I look at it more of like a tour of duty. Okay. Like, and I try to make the tasks very specific and like something I have an ability to train and educate somebody on day one, right? So like if you ask me about any of these things, we have policy, procedure, video training, like we have it's overboard. It's to the point where like if anyone came to me and asked me a single thing, how do I do this? How do I do that? I would look at them and laugh in their face. All right. How dare you ask me that? How dare you waste my time? And if somebody is doing that, our managers know, like, listen, this isn't the person that's, really, really on board with our mission, right? Because if you've been taught, you've been trained, like we don't wait for you to ask us. We're all over that, right? We get those things out of the way. And again, getting them to take accountability for the learning has been a big game changer for us, right? So when you're thinking of your roles and responsibilities, right? A sales manager, for example, all right, you could have this thing blank. If you want to be a $5 million company, you will need a sales manager if you're doing B2C work. All right. If you're dealing with customers, you need one. Now, the sales manager role for me wasn't filled till 5 years ago. All right. I've had it on my chart, on my organizational chart for a decade. Okay. I didn't have it filled. All right. The task and responsibilities weren't all there. All right. But as things came up and as I started to shift and as I started to grow, we became more and more defined on this role. Right. So think about it. It was there for 5 years, just, being updated, being adjusted, like as if we were going to hire this person tomorrow. And then all of a sudden, the time comes where it's appropriate and where we actually need them. And we're very clear about those things. Right. And again, I encourage everyone to kind of take that approach with plan your business. Where do you want your business to stop? Where do you want to exit from? What is that business going to require at that level? Okay. So if your plan is to exit at $10 million, okay, then you're going to build a company structure probably similar to this that is going to have all the roles that you would require, and you're going to leave those blank. You're going to leave those open positions. Okay. And we're going to add on to them to the point where now instead of guessing on what you need next, it's already laid out for you. All right. Does that make any sense? Any questions? Nope. Good. Okay. So internal communication. I'm curious to know how many of you guys have really struggled with like people communicating with each other, even in the same department or the same office or on the same site? How many are actually
Actually,
baffled?
we had a real situation in the last 2 weeks, and I took a note out of your page
Mm.
and I asked a lot of questions this morning, and it was pretty epic. I was gonna save it for some one-on-one, but the communication just seemed to all of a sudden change and falter. Like it went from good to shitty, and
Hmm.
it came across like a lack of caring. I know that's not the case, but it's like complacent almost.
Right.
But yeah, it was really weird just in the last like 2 weeks, night and day from what our usual.
Yeah, and what you're gonna find in there, usually when I'm experiencing those things. So communication, once the communication breaking down and those little like steps are my first red flags. All right. So, people like when people's intent begins to shift, the first place that you're going to see a breakdown is in communication, especially if you're dealing with technicians, you're dealing with electricians, stuff like that. What happens a lot in those roles, particularly, I find, is because of their personality profiles, they don't say shit if their mouth is full of it. They don't say anything. They don't tell you that they have a problem. It's only when again, the owner has to notice something has changed for them to get that attention. And like again, it's like a game of cat and mouse, right? Like, how was I supposed to know this and this and this? So the key here, and why I'm bringing this up, is communication as like the CEO of your business, getting the cadence between two parties. So from manager to sales rep, from sales, sales rep to client, like making sure all of those are defined of what the expectation is and are like how it's supposed to be done, why it's done, all of those things. So that if, the sales rep, for example, didn't report to the sales manager, we're catching that early. Like, hey, and what, like, I noticed you didn't hand in your daily sales report. What's going on with that? Like, that's right on the rate, like that day. Okay. Now we're having a discussion. I'm not having a discussion. And again, that's if my sales manager is doing the right job and doing the right thing. All right. He's going to be reaching out and asking those questions early. And maybe the sales manager is pissed off because he didn't get his commission check this week. Literally, we have those conversations every week where that's their way of telling you they're pissed off, or that's their way of expressing that, something's not right. Okay. Now it's not all. Some people are, you can have the opposite to this, and this is why it's very important as well. You can have the guy that exaggerates everything and that creates chaos. All right. You got to watch out for them, but it's still that cadence. Like, what is the expected communication? Who, and like, why do you report to this person? Right. Does that make sense? See, Bosh, I see you got your hand up.
Yeah, so question regarding about building out the future org chart and like finding an exit around the company.
Mhm.
So if the plan is to grow to like $5 million with a vision of me being like a seasonal sales manager for my landscaping company, right?
Mhm.
Um, I'm going to be in a position where in the next 2 to 3 months, I got to sit down with my current project manager, operations manager, and give him a 3-year vision for where we're going.
Perfect. Yeah. So this is literally like, if I were in your shoes, I would start with the like the flow chart for a company structure and saying, hey, and all you do is you put the name of the title of the role, right? And it's blank, right? It's not filled yet. So again, if you want to demonstrate like, hey, this is what we need to grow to. And the reason you're doing that, okay, again, for me anyways, this is a way that I was able to really kind of share my vision with an operations manager. They can see their pathway. They can see,
Yeah.
hey, this is where we're going. Like, and you're getting them to help build those descriptions. You're getting them to talk about the problems that we're having. So again, one of the first things that you'll notice when you legitimately need a project manager, okay, it's not the little jobs and not the like getting jobs done. It's the relationships that get burned in the process. All right. So like, again, if you have a top level project manager, all right, they're managing the relationship from all aspects, right? So with a customer, and then I'll give you a good example. Like we, a couple years ago, we were struggling with, moving from the coordinator to the project manager. Every day, the coordinator was just busy, just swamped all the time, not organizing their time well, running around. And like, what was the answer to that? Is that they needed someone to manage them, someone to, be quarterback to that. And the absolute indicator for me was we lost one of our major clients that we did about $2 or $3 million a year with. And when we were going through that experience, their feedback to us was, we love your work, we love everything else, but we're not getting work done that we've scheduled with you for like 6 months prior to it. Right. We're not getting to that point. We're not. And it really came down to like, I needed somebody that was able to clear the path, get the big things out of the way so that the coordinator could take care of the smaller details, and then down to the crew leaders and stuff. Right. So it does take that, and it's a different personality altogether. So, kind of coming back to this, where you'll start to notice is like when you're having your meetings with your staff, what problems are they bringing up? What do they wish that was better? Okay. What is the, again, and you got to be able to decipher bitching versus like actual, like legitimate, like problems, right? So scheduling is another great one as an example. If you have a coordinator, and you've got them over capacity, right? Meaning they're running around or a wide area that they're covering. All right. And you start noticing that they're missing Fridays, missing Mondays, missing, like, you're burning them out, right? You can see other examples of it as well. But what's that a sign for you? Do we need another coordinator, or do we need someone to help him manage his time? Do we need somebody to help them, and again, getting specific to the role, all right, we have to really think, how do we prevent that from happening in the future? Because putting too much on one person, all right, is an absolute recipe for disaster. You should never have anybody at 100% capacity, ever. All right, just take it from my experience. You might be at 100%, but if you do expect that from your employees and staff, you're going to burn them out very, very quickly. And they're you know, you'll be, it doesn't matter how much you're paying them. It really doesn't, right? If you're bringing too many problems that aren't within their job description to them, that's a great way to lose good people, right? If we're, again, we don't have the supports in place, that's a great place to, you know, start turning people over as well. Okay. So any questions about this particular thing so far? Okay. So and again, just you'll notice that all of these things you probably wouldn't find, you know, specifically, like if you did a, you know, a generic search of what a project manager was at a roofing company, all right, you'll notice that they may have way more responsibilities. This is specific to our business. This is specific to what we need and how we operate. Okay. I long ago gave away like what's out there. Like I can share with you guys hundreds of other people's job descriptions. I don't recommend that you do that way, because again, you're gonna include things that you don't even have, right? So again, really think through these job descriptions and these responsibilities. All right, it's less about, you know, what you would like that person to do. It's more about what can we teach them to do. What do we have the capabilities of delegating to, right? And why do we need to delegate that? Does that make sense? So again, if you were to read mine versus like a generic, you know, project manager, you're going to see a vast difference. Okay. And this plays into how I've set my business up, how, you know, how my systems operate, how, you know, what my vision is. Okay. Don't wear anybody else's underwear. Okay. And that's all you're doing by stealing someone's job description, right? You're taking another business that's at a totally different place than you are, maybe totally different objectives, different values, different everything. All right. And you're trying to be them, right? It never works out. Okay. And it's much easier to think about building a job description, again, from a task and responsibility. Like, what can we delegate off? All right. At what point do we get overwhelmed that we need to get these things and these things off? Just like we talked about with the zone of genius, right? When a CEO needs to rewrite their job description, the first step is to decide what things are in my zone of genius and what things do I hate doing that I'm not competent at doing, and start to delegate from there. Okay. Right. So again, you know, we have it all broken down, you know, what admin does, like what all these things do. Now, maybe we'll quickly discuss, like, these things change, these things develop, these things, you know, we update these regularly, right? And again, we only update them as let's say we want, you know, our admin to take on, you know, an SDR role, okay, or a part of it. Maybe that we want them to do social media or add something to it. What's my responsibility to be able to include that in the job description as the CEO? What do you think my responsibility should be? Or a manager at that?
If you're at the top of the food chain, you should be building more leaders.
Mm-hmm. Right. So here's one of the things that I've you know, learned to do kind of as I've grown, and that you can adapt very early on, is that you have to learn to work through people. Okay. You know, once you get over a certain point, if you don't learn to work through people, all right, it all falls down. Okay. You can't create chain of command. You can't create structure. You can't create trust. You know, all the symptoms of a dysfunctional team start to show up. So I'll tell you, you know, what we do and how I've done this over the years is I don't try and solve the problem. All right. I'm not there to put out fires anymore. Okay. Now, depending on where you are, that this may be, you know, may be true, but no matter what, if you want to grow your business to anything, you know, that's sustainable long-term and doesn't involve you, the sooner you can kind of make this switch over and, you know, start to build your people, is when someone comes to you with a problem. All right. The first way to deal with it is, like, you know, asking them questions around it, right? Like, what have you tried? Why isn't that working? What could we do to make it better? All right. And then getting them to take the responsibility of making the change, right? Getting them to, communicate with other people about the problem. All right. But I'm not just going to step in and say, oh, we're changing this and we're doing this and here's the command. Never, ever works. Okay. And if I just started changing roles and like adding responsibilities to certain people, like, again, all you're going to get is pushback from that, right? And you're going to teach your people to become dependent on you coming up with all the solutions to the problem. So what I do, if there's a like a known problem that we have, is I get my team to actually come up with those solutions. I try to play incompetent. All right. I try to play ignorant to, I have ideas, obviously, look what I do, right? I can help them try and fix it. But if I do that, then I'm actually I'm making them dependent on me, and I'm removing my ability to be separate. And again, I encourage everybody to do this. You can give them resources, you can coach them, you can do it, but you can't solve the problem for them. You cannot do that. Okay. So again, if you were to have something like this as our job description, my job would be to bring the current job description, all right, and ask them to modify the the tasks and responsibilities. Tell me what you do. Great. Now that we said that Karen's going to take over social media, awesome. Next thing we need to do is training. I want to know specifically what that means. How are we going to onboard her to that new role or responsibility? Give me it step by step, right? You want to delegate your responsibility to someone else, right? So again, the admin that we have perhaps is moving into more of an office manager role. Awesome. What tasks have to come off your plate? Great. Do we have training specifically for those? So now I'm not doing the work of creating all these things, am I? Does that make sense? Anybody had this experience already along the road where everybody's having issues internally with getting responsibilities held or accountable for?
Do you want me to tell you what happened this morning?
Sure. I'd love for you to.
Yesterday, our team lead and I sat down and we discovered like a lot of gaps in details that are missing off of pictures or notes on our checklist, or even just knowing if the job's completed properly or not,
Right.
summary, stuff like that. And it really puts a pause to both of our roles because I can't quote, invoice, etc. He can't, we've got to complete reports. So, last night, leaving work, it was like, okay, I guess I have to start him on the corrective path, which feels gross because we're a skeleton crew and it's not a vibe I enjoy. Nobody likes to be criticized. This morning I walked in and I threw the corrective into the garbage.
Yep.
And instead I took a page out of Jay Carter's book and I sat him down and I said, okay, let's have a conversation. What are your career goals? What do you want to be known for?
Right.
What's important to you? And it was like kind of left field. And then what kind of problems are we experiencing? And then we kind of talked about, the behavior, the impact, and then what the options were. And ultimately, he's the one who decided what he's going to do for the next 2 weeks to correct the communication issues. Perfect. And it was just like,
right?
Damn it, Jay was right again.
So,
it's kind of annoying to say that, just FYI, because it's often.
but that's a perfect example of leadership versus managers. Okay. And again, like, we need more leaders. We need less managers. Okay. For me, essentially, like, leadership is getting somebody from point A to point B, where, when you get to that point B, they're just as excited, right? They're still motivated and they haven't began to resent you, right? A manager's job, on the other hand, is to make sure that the things we've agreed to get done. Okay. That things on that checklist are finished, right? So again, when we're trying to lead our team versus, trying to manage our team, those are two different things. And one of the big crises you have in your business very early on, and it's at that $1 million, $2 million mark, is the leadership crisis. Who's the leader, right? Especially as you start to bring people in. And again, the only way to get through leadership crisis is to teach it, to instill it in all of your team, and to make very clear, defined, responses to the problems we're having. And again, a lot of the hardest thing is, as a CEO and as an owner, your instinct is to jump in and put out the fire. Your instinct is to stop the suffering, stop the bleeding, and you want to, and you may very well, like, again, you build all the systems, right? The system builder and the system user are two different people. Okay. And you can never ever expect somebody to like come in and do what you're doing, at least in my position, in my steps. All right. And even though I know what the right thing would be, and I can have all these great ideas, I'm at the point now in my business where I can't change anything. I cannot. I can only get my staff, my employees to change it. And I can only hold them accountable to like what we've agreed to. And that's a perfect example of working through people rather than, trying to come in and be a dictator, right? Because it won't work. Nobody will buy in. No one will respect your business. No one will want to be there even. You know what I mean? Like, and we do this so naturally and so easily, and we mean good by it. All right. We do. All right. But it never works out that way, right? You got to let people, use their brains. If you don't, then they're just going to become stagnant. All right. They're going to be scared to make mistakes. They're going to be scared to, have things go wrong. And this is exactly what I mean about, it's okay to make a mistake. I don't want a company scared to make mistakes. That is death right on the table. All right. The second your staff are afraid to make mistakes, they're afraid to make decisions and think for themselves. Game over. It'll always be on you. You will never get your time back. You will never have a business or people that can work without you doing all the thinking. All right. So how do we put this into practice? Again, giving them the power to make that mistake, is supporting them knowing they're going to make a mistake. You know how many times I've had to do that, and it just, like, my skin crawls. Like, how can I come here with you guys and like be like, hey, here's how you fix it, and then just stand there like I'm incompetent in front of my team going, well, I'm not sure how I would fix that. I don't really know. What would you do? Right? Keeping my mouth shut, because I want them to make the mistake. I want them to try and fix their own problems. All right. And again, I have a tolerance for that in every single role as somebody's moving up or, developing into that. If you don't allow them that freedom to make those mistakes and make their own decisions, that game over, right? Don't even have the role, right? And as you build out middle management, you'll see that even more, right? As you hire a sales rep, an estimator, all these people, again, that's the middle of your company. You've got to be very, very careful at that point, right? And especially if, again, you want the business to operate without you, as you build out these roles and descriptions, all of the lessons learned, especially in the bottom roles and the developing roles, need to come from the feedback of your team. All right.
I have a question, if I
Sure.
may. How do you empower? So I can say, hey, I empower you to make decisions. I said it this morning, you're the one in the field. We're going to stand with you. We'll stand with you client facing, and then we'll handle it internally. But this person does call a lot about, sometimes, I don't want to use the word common sense, but like, take ownership and make a judgment call, right? How do we empower that, like, and genuinely reduce that?
So if we were to go up to the top, number one would be core values. Okay. So our core values is we want people to independently work, right? We want people to, be troubleshooting. We want people to work profitably. We want, like, that's where it first starts. And that you can kind of see the do's and don'ts, right? Don't, call your manager every time you need help. Like, don't do that. We don't like that. That's a part of your culture. That's the definition that you put down and you teach day one to everybody. Like, we first do three things. We make sure that, we've got a clear idea of the problem. That's almost always the most important thing, is that they clearly define, like, they know what the problem is. Okay. And then
it's almost like he's asking permission to do his job.
And again, that's very common, right? So like, here's got to be steps in those do's and don'ts, right? So like, have I consulted Google? You know what I mean? Like, have I checked out before I ask a manager and stop them from what they're doing? I have to take these steps. I have to ask, this person, that person. That's the communication I was talking about. Like, do not come, okay. And again, what that's going to do is it gives them, like, what it sounds like is it's confidence, right? So the confidence isn't there. And the reason why is maybe, again, in his last job or his last position, or, he had someone that yelled at him every time he made a mistake, or his parents, for fuck's sakes, who knows, right? Could be leftover childhood trauma, right? So he he has that in his character. Now you can switch that by, again, clearly defining from the top down, right? Like, we want you, to troubleshoot. We want you to, and you can see it right here, troubleshooting, right? How do you handle things, right? You have a customer issue. Great. We're going to talk to the production manager about it, right? Sales if necessary. And then from there on out, right? Paperwork issues. It gets kicked back to production if there is a job file issue. Operation issues, right? Production manager. You see what I'm saying here about like creating those pathways? And you'll be surprised. Most of the time, if you teach people to solve their own problems and you make it clear in these important documents, like, they're like, okay, great. That's what I do, right? You never hear from them again. It can be just like that, right? Now, if somebody's refusing to follow the steps and procedure, right? Now we know we have a different problem, right? So, like, let me ask you maybe another question around that. Like, does he have a clear, like, troubleshooting, like, this is what we do in this situation? Like, has anybody made that clear to him or helped him to try and solve his own problems?
I always think it could be improved.
Sure.
I've been working on an SOP for workflow.
Okay.
It's not finalized. It's being managed up. But the conversations continually happen. And that's why I'm trying to put everything into an SOP or put everything into like something tangible I can put into the CRM for them to go sign off on, learn from, etc.
Right.
But I feel like it could be improved. And I was looking for this advice because I want to support the lead technician.
Yep.
With how maybe he asked the questions. I find the team doesn't always bring him all the information he needs to help them. Like,
Okay.
there's just a lot of gaps, right? But then there's communication on both sides. So I was hoping to, like, this is great. Provides a lot, what we're
Mhm.
learning today, and I'm grateful. And maybe we'll have to take it offline or one-on-one or something for some support for this person in particular with how he could communicate to the field.
Right.
To empower that, because it's not enough to tell them to, hey, you're a grown man, like, you're trained, you know what to do, and at the end of the day, it's confidence. You nailed it on the head, right? Like, I want him to go, yeah, this is the right choice.
Right. So there's an above the line approach and there's a below the line approach. So
Yeah.
above the line or below the line is like, go figure it out yourself. Right. Why are you asking me?
Right.
Like, what? Like, and that's usually, what most of us are taking those approaches, unfortunately. Right. Like, getting frustrated or like just doing it for them or like continuing to do it, even though it pisses you off. The above the line approach is like not giving them the answer, but at the same time, walking them through a set process that you want them to follow. So how I would handle that is like exactly like this. If we need to troubleshoot something, here's the steps. All right. I'm going to demonstrate that to you. All right. So let's say, you had a technical question. Great. Awesome. Did you, consult this manual? Right. Just like, check that off. No. Great. Did you ask the lead hand? No. Okay. Right. So when he comes to me, I'm going to ask him those 3 questions. Did you talk to the tech? Did you, talk to the lead hand? Right. Have you checked Google? Great. Now this appropriate
lessen
conversation.
how much he's reaching out to the lead hand. That's the issue at hand.
So
like,
that's a
I'm
cadence.
finding
100% communication error between. This is exactly what I was referring to. That's a communication error where we don't have a standard set. So really, it's not your problem. What the lead tech is, he's the culprit in this because he's invited it at a point. But what he hasn't done is he needs to hand that down and go, hey, listen, man, I noticed we've been having a lot of issues with, having technical things. So I want to help you out on this. Here's what I do. And like, I'd like to see if you and I can work together on this. And I would give them the 3 steps, the troubleshooting guide, right? Before you give me a shout, just do this first. 1, 2, 3, boom. Do that for me. Because next time when he comes to him, all the text is going to do is repeat. Did you check the text? Did the blah, blah, blah. Like, and if there's any no's in there, then why are we having this conversation? Please go back and do those. Done. Right? Now he'll know, right? You're enforcing that behavior to happen. But again, it's, those kind of things. Let's say that the technician gets pissed off at him. It's just like, fuck, man, like, fuck, why you always ask me to do shit? Like, blah, blah, blah. They're fighting now. All right. And then who's it come to? Next person up, next person. And then it spreads, like, where all it was in the very beginning is like, and that is like, it's your job you know, as the operator and as the CEO, even to spot those problems, okay, and get them, you know, get a system in place, get something to address it. And then the art and the finesse part is make them think it was their idea, right? That's
that I can accomplish easily.
well, again, you know how many things, like how much further you get by suggesting solutions, right? And the whole time you have it, like you're holding the card, right? You know what you want, but I'm not going to rush in there, put out the fire. I'm like, hey man, what do you think? Maybe like we came up with an SOP or something. Like, I don't know. Like I play so stupid with, like, it's hilarious, but I'm getting them to think about it, but I'm guiding them at the same time, right? I'm just asking them questions. Like, do you think like maybe we should have like some sort of structure or something like around this? Like maybe we'd like update it here, and they're like, yeah, that's a great idea. Good. Well, why don't you go and see what would be the steps for that? You know, can you come back to me and maybe we can chat about it then? Like, simple, you know, and that's
I
contagious.
really appreciate this.
Yeah.
I did ask for help on how to do an SOP, and well, I'm not admin. Okay, cool. I'm not a tech, but we need to meet in the middle. So
Yeah,
want to hang out
so
next Thursday? And it was really resisted, I promise you. But
totally. So again, get to the heart of his pain, right? So the pain is like, you know, he's confused. He's not confident. He doesn't feel like he's being heard. He's, you know, he was yelled at as a kid. Who knows? Okay. So the approach on that is, hey, we got a problem. Cool. I don't, you know, we're going to turn this problem into an opportunity for us to improve. And like, I'm concerned about you because you seem frustrated. I want to make it about them, right? I'm concerned, like, you know, I've seen you've been struggling, right? Is there a way that maybe you and I could, you know, have a discussion on, see if we can correct the issue? And then, you know, again, we're gonna implement from there. Even if you use one thing that they've suggested, that now doesn't become a demand or another thing they have to do. That becomes something that they've bought in, and they're, you know, that's how you get them to actually do what you want them to do, right? It's both of yours now, right? Instead of you just being like, do it like this and this. And managers have to be taught that same thing, right? That's a skill that you need to learn. And again, you have to be flexible, but, you know, structured. Makes sense? Cool. All right.
Thank you.
Holy shit. I didn't even get halfway. Oh my God. So again, I can kind of keep going through some of these things. What I wanted to kind of touch on today is, you know, for everybody that's kind of listening in on the call here, how many of you have really thought about, you know, the structure of your company and the roles and responsibilities to where you want to be? Maybe not even, how many even have like roles and responsibilities and structure now? Anybody missing those things?
I'm gonna work on it.
Okay. All right. Just to help you out, by the way, that's $1,000 an hour task. So, you know,
Oh, that's good.
all right. So when you're doing things like that, and the reason why is because, again, go forward without it and watch what happens. I dare you, right?
Yeah, I can see being like, just even if I get a labor right now, like what is he expected to do? Like that would just be like nothing, just clean up right now, and he could do like more. Like, yeah, I gotta write something like that before I get one, and I need one right now, but I'm not ready because of that.
And here's the thing, okay? And I want to stress this to you, okay? Done is better than perfect. You'll never be perfect. They never stop changing. They never stop developing. The second they do, all right, you better be at the point where you're ready to exit. Okay. And I mean that sincerely. Like, again, you plan these things from your exit. If you want to be a $20 million company, then you better have a structure for a $20 million company and start building up, because those roles are far more sophisticated, and everything else that goes with that, systems, processes, idea, like all those things have to be, you have to grow into them, right? What you don't want to have happen is to, you know, push to get to a point and then, you know, take 3 steps back because you weren't ready for it, right? And most contractors start off with that, and they make the same mistake. It's like, it didn't have to be that painful. And what will happen if you do it often enough, you'll lose all of the respect of your team. They won't want to adapt or change or do anything because, you know, again, last time we tried it didn't work, right? You try to implement something and it fails, especially in front of your team, they lose confidence in you, right? So again, just like hiring for a role, you lose confidence in you. All right. So if you know, didn't make a job description, hired a project manager, thought it would be great. It didn't work out. Now, next time you go to fill that role, you're going to be hesitant around it, aren't you? And be like, fuck, I hired that guy, but he fucked me, right? Like the worst. You set yourself up for that. And I see that all the time where guys are scared. They've tried it. It didn't work out. And now they don't want to, learn that lesson yet. They don't want to go back to that place. So they try to avoid it, and it just never works out. Right. So again, getting really clear on your end and then planning for those things, it's all the difference in the world. All right. And like, that's easy scalability. I mean, again, you get to that point and you can just pull the trigger. Like, that's a great feeling, right? And it's clear, it's relevant to the actual role as well, because when that person starts, some things will change, right? Some things, they don't work out, but you're looking at it on the task base, not the whole role. Does that make sense? So like, let's say they weren't capable of, they're terrible at returning, follow-up emails. Okay. Maybe we take that out of their job description and we put it on the other one. All right. But if we're not tracking that, not holding them accountable to that, and they're not aware, like, again, there's not a cadence of that still having to be done. All right. You may lose a couple of customers and think it's way worse than it is, right? He just didn't do any follow-ups. We lost $1 million worth of business. That's a loss, right? Because he didn't do any follow-ups. Yeah. Now, I used our $8 admin to actually do all the follow-ups, or I automated it. No harm, no foul. You see what I'm saying? Now I'm not blaming the person. We found a solution for it. The role and responsibility is still getting done. But again, if that's not defined, that's not even in your head. What do you see as being the loss? We lost $1 million. I don't know why. I don't know, I don't know, how I'm going to prevent it in the future. All right. So now we're going to just throw somebody else in to make up their own role and responsibility. Like that never, ever, ever works out in any, setting. So again, as you build your role out, as you grow in your business, because you have to grow first, right? All right. The things you hand down and pass off, okay, you want them to evolve and develop, but you have to make that clear for the next position and the next position down, right? And you have to train that to your people so that everything's getting done, all right? And the roles are staying clear, right? We're staying, we can bring somebody else even in to replace them. Cool.
The document that you were showcasing today, is it in the school classroom?
This is actually my sales playbook. I can send it to you though.
You don't mind? Thank
yeah,
you.
these are blanks too. I'll do that for sure.
Amazing. Because I have a information management technician / coordinator that's going to be hired in the next 3 weeks.
Wow. That's just
and then
too
I
many
could build
words.
HR. I know, but they wouldn't let me put admin assistant on the grant that I acquired.
Okay.
So they're like, you're not allowed to hire an admin assistant. I'm like, information management technician.
Oh, I see.
So when you were talking about that today, I had a giggle because I've been playing with those moments. But I got to figure out what their exact tasks are.
Okay. So I have another document for you guys, for those of you that don't have it yet, but it's called the Who Does What.
Yeah. Oh my God, please.
Yeah, it's a good one. So here's
I have
here's
to
a prize.
remove myself from the $20 an hour tasks and hand them off.
Right. This one in particular.
Thank you, by the way.
No problem. Surprised for hearing all my my rambling. So Steve Vosh, while I'm grabbing this, I see your hands up. What's up?
Oh no, sorry. That was from before.
Oh, okay. Anybody have any questions? I'm gonna just pull this document out. Anybody have any questions? Having any struggles internally with how to kind of start to execute this?
So you start with a vision, right? Of an exit.
Absolutely.
Of what you want as an owner. Like as an owner, yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And then you build an org chart with redundancy in the system. And a general job description where if this person quits, this next person can move into that role. And that gives you a stable organization to step back from.
Correct. So, and again, as things happen, right? Because you don't know what you don't know, right? Like the experience you are going to have running a $5 million business is not going to be the same as 1 million. That's the big thing we don't really account for here, right? Now, in order to kind of, make sure that your lessons learned along the way don't become, negative things, right? We have to be able to develop those roles, those descriptions. Like and again, that's what I mean by more tour of duty, right? They won't end up being what you think they are, but the act of like creating them as you go and as problems come up, that is the key takeaway, right? That's how you do this, is that, again, don't, you can imagine things, you can plan things, you can plot things. It'll never actually be it. But the closer you are, right, when you get to that point, the better, right? Let me say this. I have some examples as well. Again, of like different company structures, depending on like what your revenue goals are and which sector you're in. I'll have to dig that out and share it with everybody when I post this thing. So again, if you're
That would
only
be
planning,
awesome.
if you're only planning $1 million company, I mean, those are much easier structures to build. If you're doing, once you get over $2-3 million, like now you're working through people, and that's where you need these middle management roles that just, again, they can be consuming and hard to get right. That's the bigger thing, right? Because you've hired tradespeople, project managers and stuff. Now how do you get, the upper roles, operations managers, things like that, right? We all know what that struggle can be like. All right. Here you go. This is a great one to start with, just in general for, developing these things, is the roles. Okay. All right, guys. Hope everybody got some value today, and we'll see you guys shortly.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Jay.